Hey everyone, it's Carissa. Thanks for joining me today for day 5 of the 12 Tags of Christmas with a Feminine Twist here on ellenhudson.com. Today I'm featuring some products from Pretty Pink Posh, and our theme for today is snow. So I have a variety of products here. I'm going to be using this holiday greeting stamp set. I love the fonts in these, and I am going to actually create a background using that Joy stamp over and over again. And I also have some die sets here. This is the Merry Christmas script die. I love this font. And there's also a thank you die that coordinates with that. These little snowflake sequins are super adorable. These are the sparkling clear, which is my favorite color. And the fact that they're the little snowflakes makes it perfect for our theme today. And finally, I don't think you can make Christmas cards without a good holly die set. So I'm going to be using this from Pretty Pink Posh today, and I love the stitching on that. So as I mentioned, I'm going to create a stamped background on my card just to kind of fade into the background, give it a little bit of texture, and I want to stamp this at an angle. So I'm placing the stamp on the angle that I want it on my tag, and I'm making sure that the grid lines of my block are parallel to the edge of the tag there. And that way, all I have to do to make sure I'm always stamping at the same angle is make sure that the lines on my grid block are parallel to the side of my tag. And that keeps me on the same angle. Now, even though I know this, I always want to tilt my block to make it match the angle of that previous Joy. So you're going to see me kind of trying to tip my stamp at an angle, and then I remember, oh no, I got to line it up straight. And then I get my act together and I get everything stamped right. So I'm just going to stamp this over and over again, making sure that the lines on my block are parallel to the edge of the tag. And I'm stamping this in some Hero Art soft granite ink, and I'm just kind of nestling them into each other. And once I get kind of maybe 2/3 of the way up the tag, I'm going to go back and fill in some of these empty spaces with a little snowflake from that same stamp set. And I'm stamping it in some Hero Arts cotton candy ink. It's one of my favorite pink inks, by the way. So now that I have this all stamped, I am going to start working on other pieces of the card. There's a lot of die cutting. And what I'm going to do, because I'm going to be stacking up several die cuts, is I'm taking a piece of this basil cardstock. This is the Candy Hearts cardstock. And I'm putting some stick-it adhesive all along the back of this. This is just going to keep me from having to add adhesive to these really fine die cuts. So you'll see me just remove a part of the backer paper and press that area down. Then I'm going to remove the next part of the backer sheet after I remove that hair from my arm or whatever. I'm going to press it down, and I'll just continue removing the backer until I have all of this cardstock coated with that adhesive. Now, because I'm cutting through this rather thick cardstock and a thin layer of adhesive, I'm going to switch to my precision base plate. It takes the place of the bottom plate in your cutting sandwich. So I have my platform, my precision base plate, my paper, my die with the blade side down, and then my standard cutting plate on the top. And I have the gold glitter one here because, I mean, I gotta have the gold glitter one, right? And I'm going to run that back and forth through the die cut machine a couple of times just to make sure I get cut all the way through. And I am going to cut this out like 5 or 6 times. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer these all together to make a really thick die cut embellishment for the front of my tag. So you see, I have all of these, and I've left them in the negative space so that I can kind of keep track of everything. And I've also coated a piece of this kind of teal colored cardstock with that stick-it adhesive as well. And I am going to die cut the holly leaves from this teal cardstock. I'm going to be layering these up too. I'm not going to go quite as deep on the holly leaves as I am on the sentiment, but I'm going to cut several of these, and it doesn't hurt to have a couple extra holly leaves lying around because they make really fast and easy embellishments for Christmas projects. So now that I have my die cutting done, I'm going to go ahead and remove this first word from the negative space, and I'm going to pop out all those innards of those letters that I don't want. And then I'm going to remove the backer from the stick-it adhesive. And I am going to position this on top of one of the other Christmas die cuts that's still in its negative space. That's going to help me line it up and keep the shape that this word was intended to have, because sometimes these intricate dies, as you pull on them and you work with them, they can kind of like stretch out almost like a spring. But if you keep them in the negative space and you layer them up like that, you'll be sure that you have that original shape of the die cut itself. Now, as I line these up, you'll see I have my little piercer in my hand. I kind of use that to kind of get into the inner parts of those letters to kind of help me line that all up, make sure everything's pushed into place. And this stick-it adhesive does allow you to kind of reposition a little bit, and then once you press it in place, it's permanent. So I have these all stacked up. There's 5 of them here, and you can see that beautiful dimension that I get. And I'm just going to leave it in the negative space to kind of keep track of it, because I have been known to lose things on my desk. And I do everything I can to avoid it, but it still happens. And now I'm going to do the same thing with these holly leaves. I'm removing the backer from the stick-it adhesive, and on the holly leaves, I only layered up 3 of those. Now, I also die cut this little triple berry die from the pink cardstock as well. It has the stick-it adhesive along the back, and I'm going to layer those up just 3 deep, just like the holly. And then I will have all of my die cuts ready to go onto my project. And layering these up like this just really helps give them a really solid embellishment look on your project. It kind of takes away that it's just paper look and really makes them something kind of big and bold for your project. So I like to do this, even though it does take a little bit of time sometimes. Now, through the magic of television, you don't always see that I fuss with things and kind of play with them. I am kind of figuring out what I want to do with my tag, and I'm just keeping it on one of those adhesive backers that I had left over from my stick-it adhesive until I really figure out what I want to do. And I placed these die cuts onto the tag, and I really felt they need something to help them kind of stand out even more. So I decided a strip of vellum would be the perfect accent here. And I am going to go ahead and position all of my die cuts on there. I have the stick-it adhesive along the back side, so I don't have to add adhesive. I just have to press these into place really well. And you can see along that left edge, I actually ran a couple of stitching lines with my sewing machine down that left edge to keep the vellum in place and also to add a fun little detail. Now here's where we get to the snow part. I'm going to be using the Wow Puff embossing powder today, and I knew I might have to experiment a little bit with this to see the best way to do it, because I want a really super thick layer of this puff embossing powder along the top. And I tried my Versamark pin at first, and I knew that that was not going to hold it and create that really thick layer of embossing powder that I want. So I went ahead and switched over to glue. Yes, glue. Because the glue is going to dry with some dimension as well. And so when I layer the embossing powder on top of it, it already has the dimension from the glue itself. And then that embossing powder kind of puffs up and gets even thicker. So this allowed me to get a really nice thick layer along the top of those die cuts. And I'm going for that look that it's kind of accumulated from a snowfall and it's just catching on all the edges of those die cuts. I also tried some glossy accents. Both of these I would say worked about the same, but keep in mind when you are embossing with these glues that you do have to heat for a little bit longer. Now the problem with that is that you can really scorch this puff embossing powder and you can really scorch your vellum. Just ask me how I know. So you want to make sure that you're careful that you're not overheating. So make sure your heat tool is good and hot. And honestly, if I did this again, what I think I would do is add my adhesive strip, just like I'm doing with the glossy accents or that mono multi-glue. I would add my embossing powder on the top of that, and I would set it aside and let that adhesive dry. And then I would go in with my heat tool, because my heat tool is trying to dry the adhesive that's underneath before it can get hot enough to melt that embossing powder on top. So I think that if I wasn't contending with the wet adhesive, I wouldn't have that scorching problem. This, of course, is just a theory. I haven't tested it out yet, but I think I would try that in the future if I was going to do this again. So I'm just going through and adding this embossing powder, this puff embossing powder, all along the edges of all of these die cuts, just the top edges, so it looks like the snow fell on top of it and accumulated. And I'm heat setting it. And after I got this all the way I wanted it, I actually went back in and continued to add layers of embossing powder to particular areas. So you can see I'm working along the bottom here, and I'm kind of holding that tag at more of an upright angle. And you'll notice that when I go to like shake off my tag, I'm not giving it that aggressive flick. I'm allowing that embossing powder to accumulate there. And you can see, like I said, I'm holding this at a more upright angle and then just barely tapping off. I'm not even turning it upside down in this instance to really get a lot of that embossing powder along the top of these die cuts. And that's going to give me that really snowy look. Now, the great thing about this technique is that it is kind of messy in nature. And so this embossing does not have to be perfect like your little sentiment strips that you emboss and that sort of thing. This can have a little bit of overflow onto the front of the letter or onto the top of that holly leaf. It's not going to matter because it's going to look like snow. And sometimes snow goes where it wants to go. So you don't have to worry about this being perfect. I just keep adding more because I want it to really be thick and something that you can really see along the top of these die cuts. And each time I'm heat setting it, and like I said, just be really careful that you're not scorching your vellum or your embossing powder. So once I have all the snow completed on top of my die cuts, I'm going to add some snowflakes. These are those sparkling clear snowflakes, and I'm adhering them on using the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish. And then I'm going to add a little shimmer over the top of my sentiment here using my Spectrum Noir clear glitter brush overlay pen. That's just going to help that sentiment shimmer and maybe make it look a little icy too. And then I decided I wanted to add some of these 3mm sparkling clear sequins. These things are tiny and they're kind of a little bit difficult to work with at times, but I wanted to adhere some of those like they were smaller snowflakes kind of falling through the sky. And I also adhered them in the center of those snowflake sequins that I put on earlier. So now it's time to cut down this vellum. I left it long on purpose because I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it. And this side I'm going to go ahead and trim into a banner end. So I've cut a slit up the center, and then I've cut from each corner to that center slit, and that leaves me with a little fishtail or banner end. And the other side I just kind of trimmed off close to the edge of that die cut sentiment. And then I glued on a little twine bow here at the top. Now, I decided that this tag needed more layers, so I grabbed the same size tag. These are Ranger tags, by the way. This is a craft colored one, and I added a little stitching detail using the Essentials by Ellen Stitching Lines dies. And then I'm going to stamp that joy at the same angle again, kind of creating that angled effect. But this time I used a Versamark ink pad for just a tone-on-tone effect. Once it dries actually a little bit darker than this, so it gave me that contrast that I was looking for. And then I'm going to layer these up and loop some twine through the top and call it good. And I love the effect that you get when you kind of layer these two tags on top of each other. So there you have it, day 5 of the 12 tags of Christmas with a feminine twist. Today's theme was snow, and we have lots of different snowy effects going on here, from the embossing powder to the sequins to the little stamped snowflakes as well. And I love the way that this turned out. As always, I will have links to the featured products in the description at YouTube, but head to the coordinating blog post because I will have more still shots, more information, a complete list of supplies over there, and you can see what Eloise made with some pretty pink posh products and the snow theme as well. Thanks for stopping by, thanks for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.